Right now, tech billionaires are basically telling us that artificial intelligence is going to destroy all our jobs.
Oh, absolutely.
But then, in the very next breath, they are begging you to invest billions of dollars into it.
Right. It's a massive contradiction.
Exactly. And what if the macroeconomic data actually shows the exact opposite? Like, what if AI actually saves your job, but ends up, I don't know, crashing the stock market instead?
Yeah, we're watching the very people building our future act increasingly terrified of it. Like they're hoarding capital like we're at the end of days.
Which is exactly what we are getting into today. So, welcome to the deep dive. Think of this as your personal strategy session for navigating this incredibly weird, rapidly shifting technological and economic landscape.
It is definitely a weird landscape right now.
It really is. And today, we are pulling from a recent, super grounded, and just wildly fascinating interview with business professor and tech analyst Scott Galloway. Our mission here is to cut straight through the marketing hype of the Silicon Valley elite.
Which there is a lot of.
So much. We want to figure out why the top 0.1% are disconnecting from society. And, most importantly, we want to extract some incredibly potent advice on how you can build resilience and purpose in a world that just feels, well, completely automated.
Yeah, because we are definitely living through a massive structural shift. But the goal today is to help you separate genuine systemic economic change from what is essentially just dressed up fundraising.
Okay, so let's tackle the biggest elephant in the room first, because I think this is the immediate fear for anyone listening right now, is artificial intelligence coming for your livelihood.
Right. The job apocalypse narrative.
Exactly. Because if you listen to the rhetoric from people like Elon Musk or Sam Altman, they are prophesying this dystopian reality where human work becomes entirely optional or just obsolete entirely.
Well, we have to look at the underlying financial motive behind that kind of catastrophizing. I mean, these tech companies have committed massive, massive amounts of capital to building AI infrastructure.
Billions.
Billions. And they are sitting on astronomical valuations. So to justify those numbers to their investors over the next 5 years, they have to deliver one of two things.
Okay, what are they?
Well, they either need to generate $1 trillion in incremental new revenue, which, we simply aren't seeing yet. I mean, there is no AI-powered moisturizer flying off supermarket shelves.
Ah, right, the revenue isn't there yet.
Exactly. Or option two, they have to deliver massive corporate cost savings.
And let's be real, massive corporate cost savings is just a polite boardroom translation for firing thousands of people.
That is exactly what it means.
So they are essentially incentivized to tell a story where their technology is so world-shattering that it destroys jobs. Because that's the only narrative that proves the tech is worth the billions they've spent on it.
It's storytelling. It's storytelling to access cheap capital. It is entirely a pitch deck.
Wow.
Because if you pull back and look at the actual macroeconomic data, it completely contradicts this whole narrative of a meteor hitting the job market.
Right, the data paints a very different picture.
It really does. Right now, U.S. unemployment sits at a very low 4.5%. Youth unemployment is actually slightly below its historical average. Furthermore, the number of new business permits per capita has doubled in the last decade.
Okay, wait, I have to play devil's advocate here for a second. Because Galloway mentions the executive assistant example.
Oh, yeah, the EA example.
Right, where in the past, a company might need, say, 10 assistants to manage scheduling, travel, reception, all of that. But today, one highly skilled assistant powered by AI agents can do the work of those 10 people.
Right.
So how does that not mathematically lead to 9 unemployed assistants? Like, where do those people go?
So they get reabsorbed into an expanding economy, and they're often doing higher-level tasks. Because when you drastically lower the cost of doing business, which is what AI does by automating routine tasks, you lower the barrier to entry for creating new businesses.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, that's why we see business permits doubling. People who previously couldn't afford a team of 10 can now start a company with just one AI-fluent assistant. Galloway actually points to a very specific historical precedent for this. He calls it the radiologist rule.
Oh, I remember this. A few years ago, the absolute consensus in tech was that AI would eradicate radiology jobs basically overnight.
That was the prediction, yeah.
Because the logic was that a machine can scan, a billion medical images a minute and spot a tumor way better than human eye ever could.
Yet today, job listings for radiologists are actually up.
Wait, really? They're up?
They are up. What the tech forecasters completely missed was the elasticity of demand. When AI makes scanning images cheaper and faster, well, doctors order way more scans.
That makes total sense.
Right. The AI handles the grunt work of flagging the anomalies, but the human radiologist handles the high-value work.
Like confirming the diagnosis and talking to the patient.
Exactly. Talking to a terrified patient, strategizing a complex treatment plan with the oncology team, and AI can't do that part.
So it's kind of like assuming the invention of the tractor meant the end of farming, when in reality, the tractor just meant the farmer stopped pulling a plow by hand and started, managing a fleet of equipment to yield 10 times the crops.
That is exactly the mechanism at play here. So the golden rule moving forward is this: AI isn't going to take your job. Someone who knows how to use AI is going to take your job.
Okay, which means for you listening, the strategy is super clear. You have to learn to drive the tractor.
Yes, learn to drive it.
Galloway advises having a second screen constantly open to a large language model. You have to actively port your daily digital tasks into the AI, like ask it to summarize your emails or draft memos or brainstorm ideas just to build that daily fluency.
But if we follow that logic, it leads us to a really counterintuitive reality about the financial destiny of AI itself.
Oh, this is the part that blew my mind.
Right. If this technology isn't causing mass unemployment, but rather creating massive efficiencies and lowering costs across the board, is it actually the ultimate cash cow that investors assume it is?
Which is where this gets wildly interesting. The technology that everyone assumes will mint the world's first trillionaires might actually be a financial race to the bottom.
Yeah, Galloway points out this brilliant historical paradox. Just because a technology fundamentally changes humanity doesn't mean it captures shareholder value.
Let's look at jet travel and vaccines, right? Two of the greatest, most consequential innovations in human history.
Absolutely.
Yet, if you look at the airline industry historically, it has been terrible at capturing long-term value. Because airlines compete on a commodity, just getting from point A to point B, they constantly undercut each other on ticket prices to fill seats, meaning the industry collectively has practically operated at break-even for decades.
Or look at the vaccine industry. I mean, it literally saved the global economy just a few years ago, but Moderna's stock eventually dropped 90% from its peak.
90%.
Yeah, because once the underlying technology is proven, it just becomes ubiquitous.
Right.
And with AI, the foundational models are rapidly converging. They're becoming commoditized. And this raises an enormous vulnerability regarding what Galloway calls AI dumping.
Hold on, I'm trying to wrap my head around this one. In the 80s and 90s, China dumped cheap, subsidized physical steel into the U.S. market to deliberately kneecap domestic steel manufacturers.
Exactly.
I understand putting physical metal on a cargo ship, but how do you dump a digital AI model?
You do it through open source, or what the industry calls open weight models.
Okay.
This means a foreign competitor, heavily subsidized by a state government, could spend billions training an incredibly powerful AI, and then they just release the core architecture and the pre-trained weights online for absolutely free.
Oh, wow. So suddenly a U.S. corporation that is paying, tens of millions of dollars in licensing fees to an American AI giant looks at this free, equally capable foreign model and asks, why are we paying for this?
Precisely. They will switch to the cheap or free models, and if that happens, the profit margins for domestic AI companies just evaporate overnight.
That is terrifying for the market.
It really is.
Oh.
Now, factor in that roughly 40% of the S&P 500, the index of the largest U.S. companies, is currently tied up in this giant speculative bet on AI infrastructure and chip manufacturing.
Right. So if those licensing revenues disappear, the foundation of the stock market takes a massive hit. So the irony here is that AI will probably be an incredible cost-saving tool for humanity as everyday consumers. But it might be a horrific bubble-bursting investment for Wall Street shareholders.
Galloway even makes a shocking comparison to drive this home. He states that GLP-1 weight loss drugs, so the class of medications behind things like Ozempic and Wegovy, will ultimately be a more financially valuable technology over the long term than artificial intelligence.
That sounds crazy at first, but when you look at the mechanics of it, it makes perfect sense.
It does.
Because AI is software racing toward a zero marginal cost. But a weight loss drug, that is a patent-protected biological monopoly with recurring revenue, because people will continually pay a premium to feel healthier and look better.
Exactly.
Right.
It really reframes this whole tech bubble.
It totally does. But it also forces us to ask a much deeper question. If the financial reality of AI is this precarious, why do we implicitly trust these tech billionaires as if they are modern prophets.
Well, it's a massive cultural shift. We've largely replaced our traditional heroes. It used to be athletes, government officials, or religious figures. Now society treats tech CEOs like modern deities.
It's so true. Galloway makes this profound observation about how we interact with our devices.
Mhm.
Think about it. We type our deepest, most vulnerable questions into a search bar, send them out into the ether, and basically hope for a loving, empathetic, authoritative answer.
It functionally mimics the act of prayer.
Yes.
But the danger, and this is a massive blind spot for the public, is that the people building these answering machines are legally bound to capitalism.
Yeah.
Their literal fiduciary job description is to increase earnings by 1 cent per share every single day.
But they aren't building a utopia. They are optimizing a product.
Yeah.
And they will do it even if it generates massive negative externalities.
Right.
And just to quickly define that term for you, a negative externality is a hidden cost to society that doesn't show up on a corporate balance sheet. So a social media company might post record profits, while the negative externality is a spike in anxiety and depression among teenage girls using the app, or the complete coarsening of our public discourse.
And part of the reason these leaders can so easily ignore those societal costs is because of the explosion in the wealth delta.
The wealth delta, explain that.
Well, the gap between the middle class and the ultra-wealthy isn't just about flying business class anymore. The top 0.1% have completely disassociated from the physical friction of everyday human life.
The examples in the interview are wild. They don't wait in TSA lines. They live in enclaves with private security rather than relying on public police. They even have concierge medical services where they can get their blood drawn in their living room, ship it to Norwegian PhDs, and calculate their exact cancer odds to a 7% margin.
Think about what that means for you, the listener. When the people designing the algorithms that dictate your daily digital life are completely insulated from the consequences of public policy.
Right.
When their kids don't go to public schools, when they don't use public transport, when they don't rely on local law enforcement, they lose the incentive to invest in the health of the nation.
Because when the algorithm pushes society toward the brink, you are the one left navigating the fallout in your neighborhood while they retreat behind a gated compound.
It breeds this deep, unsettling nihilism at the top. Galloway estimates that 1 in 3 billionaires has a go bag, or a literal doomsday bunker, often in places like New Zealand. Or they are obsessed with colonizing Mars.
They're treating humanity's future on Earth like a disposable video game where they can just hit reset when things get too messy.
Exactly.
And honestly, it highlights the total absurdity of the billionaire bunker plan. Galloway points out a darkly humorous flaw in their logic.
Well, the security guard thing.
Yes. If society actually collapses, the power grid fails, and money becomes worthless, what makes these guys think their private pilots and heavily armed security details won't just turn on them and take the bunker for themselves?
I mean, it's a profound misallocation of capital driven entirely by an illusion of control. And what's crucial to understand is that this disconnect at the top, where leaders are completely insulated from ground reality, isn't just happening in Silicon Valley.
No.
We are seeing the exact same dynamic play out in global geopolitics.
Which brings us to a really vital part of Galloway's analysis. And just to be super clear for you listening, we aren't endorsing any specific political view here.
Yeah.
We are strictly unpacking the source's geopolitical framework to understand how these global systems are currently operating.
Right.
The analysis looks specifically at the recent U.S.-Iran conflict to illustrate a massive breakdown in modern strategy.
Yeah. The analysis examines the previous U.S. administration's strategy, noting an attempt to achieve a defining legacy-making victory purely through kinetic military operations in the Middle East. The assumption made by leadership at the top was that applying overwhelming military force guarantees unconditional surrender.
But didn't we learn decades ago that overwhelming force doesn't guarantee a win?
Yes. And that is exactly the friction that insulated leaders fail to account for. Modern conflict rarely works that way anymore. The analysis references Ho Chi Minh's strategy in Vietnam to explain asymmetrical warfare.
Right.
The smaller opponent doesn't need to secure a formal surrender. They merely have to survive. If they survive the initial bombardment, they win by slowly exhausting the domestic morale and resources of the larger force.
And the reason nations continually resort to these blunt, highly visible military instruments is because there is a massive void in international diplomacy.
A huge void.
Galloway points out that the U.S. diplomatic corps has been systematically gutted over the years. True statecraft requires quiet, tedious, months-long line-by-line negotiations done by experts in the engine room.
But instead of doing that invisible work, modern diplomacy has been reduced to politicians seeking viral TikTok moments and domestic sound bites.
And while our leaders are busy looking for sound bites, the nature of the war itself has fundamentally shifted under their feet.
Yeah.
Galloway describes the current situation as a first true AI meme war.
An AI meme war.
Yeah. Iranian factions are utilizing highly produced, AI-driven content to outmaneuver Western messaging and win the global propaganda war.
It's essentially a digital insurgency.
I love that term. Because instead of deploying expensive fighter jets, they're deploying thousands of highly targeted, algorithmic paper cuts designed to exhaust the opponent's domestic morale and manipulate public opinion.
And this raises an incredibly important point about the extreme vulnerability of our physical world, despite all this advanced technology. If a conflict like this threatens a major global choke point, like the Strait of Hormuz, you don't even need to drop a single bomb to break the global economy.
Right, because of the insurance mechanism.
Exactly. It becomes an insurance nightmare. No underwriter in London or New York is going to insure a tanker carrying a $160 million payload of crude oil if there is even a perceived risk of a drone strike in the strait.
So the supply chain chokes, energy prices skyrocket, and the global economy stalls, simply because of the threat.
Just the threat alone.
It's paralyzing to think about all of this at a macro level. I mean, we're looking at tech bubbles that could burst, billionaires planning their escapes to New Zealand, and a geopolitical gridlock where leaders are fighting digital insurgencies while global trade just hangs by a thread.
Which is why we have to bring this back down to the micro level.
Yes, please.
Because after navigating all of these massive systemic forces, the obvious question is, how does an individual listener actually build a meaningful, resilient life in the middle of all this noise?
We have to return to the human element. Because of AI, and because of these highly curated algorithms that feed us exactly what we want to see, our daily lives have become dangerously frictionless.
Too easy.
Way too easy.
Yeah.
We can order groceries without talking to a cashier, we can date by swiping a screen, and we can curate our newsfeed so we never have to encounter an opposing viewpoint.
And Galloway identifies a very specific, devastating casualty of this frictionless life. Young people, and particularly young men, are losing the psychological ability to endure rejection.
It's like we've optimized away the emotional immune system. When you can exist entirely in a digital echo chamber, stepping out into the unpredictable, messy, real world becomes terrifying.
It is arguably the defining crisis of character in the digital age. And the prescription for success here is remarkably straightforward, but incredibly difficult to execute.
What is it?
You must intentionally seek out rejection.
You have to build the muscle.
Yes.
It's exactly like lifting weights in a gym. You have to intentionally create micro tears in the muscle of your ego to build actual lasting resilience. Go ask a stranger for a coffee date. Apply for a job you are vastly unqualified for. The goal isn't necessarily to get the yes.
The goal is to get the no, survive it, mourn it, and wake up the next day realizing you are still fundamentally okay.
Right.
That ability to process a no and keep moving forward without losing your enthusiasm is the single common denominator of all self-made successful people, and it ties directly into a concept Galloway calls selling yourself long.
I found this concept so fascinating. There's this incredible story about Adam Neumann, the controversial founder of WeWork.
Oh, this story's amazing.
He gets into a cab with the head of SoftBank, intending to ask for a $300 million investment. During the ride, the investor basically tells Neumann he simply isn't ambitious enough. By the end of that 23-minute cab ride, Neumann had pivoted and walked away with a $4 billion investment.
$4 billion. Because most of us go through life selling ourselves short, right? We view our worth as a fixed, static state. We price ourselves based on our current skills and our current title.
Yeah.
Selling yourself long means you stop pricing yourself based on today and you start pricing in your future exponential growth. You have to assume your intelligence, your wisdom, and your network will compound over time.
But let me stop you there, because to command that future value, especially in this economy we just mapped out, you can't just be arrogant. You have to lean into the very things a machine cannot do.
That is the key differentiator. In a world where AI will eventually perfectly mimic technical skills, whether that's coding a website, reviewing a legal contract, or running a basic financial analysis, the only enduring human moats will be our soft skills.
The things that make us human.
Exactly. It will be the nuance of storytelling. It will be the ability to read a room and build genuine, messy, real-world relationships. And it will be the willingness to endure the emotional friction that an algorithm is designed to avoid.
Which brings us to perhaps the most profound point in this entire analysis, and it's about how we fundamentally define our purpose.
This part really stuck with me.
We are so heavily conditioned by capitalism to seek a positive ROI, a return on investment, on absolutely everything we do. We want our friendships to network us into better opportunities, we want our hobbies to become side hustles, and we want our jobs to pay us more than the effort we put in. Everything has been reduced to a transaction.
But true purpose defies that mathematical logic entirely. True purpose is found in the investments where you can never mathematically get a positive financial return.
Like raising children. I mean, the agonizing, unpayable devotion required to raise a child. They are never going to return the thousands of hours of lost sleep or reimburse you for the financial cost of their upbringing.
No,
You
never.
are serving your country or your community where you risk your physical safety for an ideal. You can never truly be paid back for that level of sacrifice.
And understanding that leads to a profound realization about loss itself. In a society obsessed with efficiency, we tend to view grief as a breakdown, like a bug in the human operating system that needs to be medicated, fixed, or just avoided at all costs.
Right.
But Galloway frames it beautifully. He says grief is a feature. It is the receipt for love. If you are experiencing deep grief, it simply means you had the courage to invest deeply in another human being without demanding a return.
Grief is the receipt for love. That is an incredibly powerful way to look at it.
It really is.
Let's bring all of this together because we have covered massive ground today. We started by looking at the hard data, dismantling the myth of the AI job apocalypse. We unpacked the mechanics of AI dumping and the financial fragility of the tech boom.
We covered the bunkers.
Oh, yeah. We explored how the ultra-wealthy are insulating themselves in literal bunkers. And we analyzed the global gridlock caused by leaders fighting digital insurgencies while totally disconnected from reality. But ultimately, we arrived back at the sheer power of human resilience, the absolute necessity of seeking out rejection and embracing the friction of real life.
It requires a dual strategy for you, the listener. On one hand, you absolutely need to keep that second screen open. You must actively learn to use AI to protect your career and build your fluency in this new economy.
You have to drive the tractor.
Right, drive the tractor. But on the other hand, you have to consciously open yourself up to friction, to rejection, and to vulnerability. The technology protects your paycheck, but the friction is what protects your soul.
I love that. When you look at the tech elites predicting a hurricane while selling us a map to their private bunkers, it's easy to feel helpless. You can't control the macroeconomic hurricane, and you certainly don't need a bunker in New Zealand. But you can build a sturdy house right where you are.
Absolutely.
So I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, building on that definition of purpose. If true purpose is found in the investments, where you can never mathematically get a positive return, take a hard look at your own life today. What is the one thing you are pouring your time, your energy, and your heart into purely for the sake of giving?
That's the real question.
And if the answer is nothing, what might you be missing out on? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive, and keep asking the big questions.